So thank you everyone for coming today to the benchmarking forum for landlords in Oak Park. I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Allison Lindberg, the Senior Building Policy Manager at Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, where she works to improve energy efficiency in buildings in the Midwest via energy codes and market transformation strategies such as energy benchmarking. Allison currently serves on the Illinois Energy Codes Advisory Council and the 2024 IECC Residential Consensus Committee. Prior to MIA, Allison was the director of the Buildings Policy Program at Minnesota nonprofit organization Fresh Energy, and also served on the board of directors for the U.S. Green Building Council of Minnesota and the Technical Advisory Committee of the Green Star Residential Remodeling Standard. Previously, Allison was the program director for Minnesota nonprofit Dovetail Partners, working in rural areas to promote sustainability and local economic development through green building demonstration projects, community education, and contractor training. Prior to that, Allison worked for a Twin Cities urban development firm, where she wrote and implemented its green building program. Allison has a BA in architecture with a focus on sustainable design from the University of Minnesota. And in her spare time, Allison paints, plays piano, and reads science fiction and practices yoga. Me too. Okay, I will turn it over to Allison.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcella. And thank you everyone for being here today. I know it's early in the morning for most of us. And like Marcella said, I'm just going to go over some of the provisions in this benchmarking ordinance. And then afterwards, we're just looking for some feedback from you all, because it's really important that we understand, concerns and questions that the local community has about this ordinance. So a little bit about MIA. If you haven't heard of us before, we are one of 6 regional energy efficiency organizations, or REOs, that serve the entire United States. And we have a 13-state region that we cover. And we are a nonprofit membership organization, and we have over 160 members that include utilities, local governments, state governments, different kinds of academic and research institutions, and then a lot of energy efficiency companies and manufacturers. And then what we do on our building policy team is that we work to improve energy efficiency in buildings through policies and programs. And benchmarking is one of those policies that we work on. So first of all, what exactly is benchmarking? So benchmarking is just basically looking at your building's energy and water use over time. And the reason for this is if Village of Oak Park has set some climate goals, which they have, they can't understand if they're meeting those goals without first understanding what the baseline is and how the buildings are doing now. And so it has been proven that just by looking at your building energy and water consumption that you can improve it. And it's kind of the same theory as when you have a Fitbit, is when you're looking at it and you're seeing how many steps you get, and you automatically start making small changes. It's the same thing by just looking at your energy consumption over time as well. And so it's been studied and said that just by doing small incremental things over time that you will see some savings just because you're making small incremental changes. And benchmarking is not new. And I already heard that we have some people on the line that are already benchmarking their buildings, which is great. Mandatory benchmarking ordinances have been around for almost 10 years now in the Midwest, and even longer nationally. This is something that is happening across the United States. So this map here shows some of the benchmarking legislation that has passed in the Midwest. So this is not just a coastal thing that's happening. Minneapolis's benchmarking ordinance is now almost 10 years old, as is Chicago's. And there's also voluntary benchmarking programs, but we find that the mandatory benchmarking programs are the ones that get the most amount of participation, and they see the most amount of energy savings. So just in a nutshell, this is a really general summary of what the proposed ordinance will look like. And I just need to move my, there we go. Sorry, it was blocking my screen for me. building owners will essentially just be required to once a year enter in their energy and water information into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And Energy Star Portfolio Manager is a free tool that is created and run by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And I'll go into that a little bit more in detail. And this applies to buildings over 10,000 square feet and larger. And this also includes city buildings. So the city is going to be benchmarking their own buildings as well. And this does not include single family duplex or triplex buildings, but otherwise it includes privately owned buildings over 10,000 square feet and larger. And this is modeled after Evanston's benchmarking ordinance. So, nearby to Oak Park. What it will require is for building owners to give the energy and water consumption information through Portfolio Manager in 2023. And then the following year, the information will be made public. There are no requirements to actually improve the performance of your building. This is just tracking of energy and water. So this is just information gathering purposes. And just really quickly, if you want, this is how you get to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It is a free tool, as I mentioned. If you wanted to today, you could go and just create an account, try to set up your building. You can even create, they have an option there to create like a practice building if you just want to understand how to use the tool a little bit more. But besides that, one of the things that MIA provides and can provide to the Village of Oak Park is technical assistance to use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool. One of the things that we have done for other cities is what we call energy data jams. Often the biggest lift for a benchmarking ordinance is putting the building information into Portfolio Manager for the first time. It's just a one-time thing where you have to document like the building age and the building size and a couple of other things. And so we work before we actually have the data jam with the building owners to gather the information. And then on the day of the building data jam, we sit down with the building owners and help them enter the information into Portfolio Manager for all of the buildings, help them understand how to enter in the utility data information. And then the reason why we call it a data jam is because we jam it all into one day, or it doesn't even really take a whole day, and then you're done. And then all of your information is entered and you're started. And ComEd does provide automatic uploading of data to Portfolio Manager. So electricity data will can be automatically updated to Portfolio Manager. And then just once a year, gas and water information will have to be entered in manually. So that's just in a nutshell what the Village of Oak Park is looking at. I forgot to mention that we've helped many of the cities in our region with their benchmarking ordinances, and they all seem to be going off without a hitch. And just very happy to answer any questions that you may have. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Marcella, you can open it up to questions.
Great, thank you, Allison. And one other thing I wanted to mention, I'll drop this link into chat, but we do have a dedicated community engagement website that some of you may have already seen when you registered for this. But it's an opportunity to provide your thoughts even after this happens. I'll also share the screenshot of it so you have a sense of what it looks like. You can see there's, you can subscribe to stay informed about the project. There's the online FAQ, a few interesting infographics, and then a little survey that we have where you can provide your input there. So everyone is welcome to do that after the meeting, in addition to commenting today if you have a thought that comes to you. There's also going to be a study session on Monday, this coming Monday, the 23rd, January 23rd, at the village board meeting to talk about energy codes in general, and benchmarking will be a small piece of it, but you're welcome to join this study session as well. There won't be any votes or anything at that time, but it's an opportunity to listen, to provide public comment as always. So I just wanted to invite you to that. Okay, and with that, I'd love to invite everyone to ask questions, share thoughts, any sort of input you might have.
Yeah, it's Mike. I mean, just out of curiosity, could you talk a little about how you see like kind of enforcement working? You know, I mean, it sounds like a harsh term, but just how the village would encourage buildings of that size to participate.
Yeah, well, we would definitely have a phase-in period. So there would be, this wouldn't take effect, and then the next day everybody has to be in the program. So as Allison mentioned, we would host both these in-person events, and then the EPA offers basically on-call assistance for their software platform as well. That's technical assistance by phone, and et cetera. But in terms of ensuring compliance, there will be a deadline by which we'll check to see which programs have not, or which buildings have not enrolled their buildings yet. And then it would follow the typical sort of building enforcement policies. I don't know, Tammy, if you want to speak to what that looks like in detail, but it would be the same pretty much as any other building issue.
Well, I think most people on the call are familiar with our code enforcement, where we give you an opportunity to cure, and then if you don't, we issue a ticket at that point. I'm hoping that we don't have to do that for anyone.
Right. And if it is a matter of, technical know-how, we'll definitely be here for you to help you get that set up. Any other thoughts or questions? Bill?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of energy work to try and reduce our footprint and make more efficient properties. Now, if we heavily invested over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and our benchmark is much lower than the benchmark of the building next door to us, it's going to be more difficult for us to go down on consumption than someone who has not done that. Is there going to be an ability to differentiate our performance versus their performance?
Yeah, so buildings are compared nationally to other buildings of their type. So I would expect that if you've got a building of the same age and similar type to a different building that hasn't done all of the investments that you've done, your score will be higher. And then again, with benchmarking, there's no slap on the wrist. There's no issues around how your building is performing. So it's really informational for your part. And then I would say all of the data will be publicly available after 1 year. So you'll be able to see how your building is performing as regards to other large buildings in the village. And then in addition to the score that your building would receive from the national scoring system. Allison, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just put into the chat a kind of detailed link about how Energy Star Portfolio Manager and just Energy Star in general calculates the scores. But so not all buildings types are eligible for Energy Star scores, but a lot of them are. And so once you put your information into Portfolio Manager, if your building is one of those eligible types, it will create a score for you. So if you've been doing things to make your building be more energy efficient, then your score should be pretty good. And it can be something that you can use to market your properties as well, if that's something that you're interested in. And then I'll just say too, again, what Marcella is saying is this is not an ordinance that's going to require anybody, if your score is underperforming from where you would want it to be, it's not going to require you to change anything. But if you find out that you are lower in a score than where you would like to be, the village seems very open to understanding opportunities to help building owners improve their properties for energy efficiency. I think that that's a purpose of this policy, but it's not a requirement at all. It's just an understanding of how your buildings are performing.
Now, listen, I believe that multifamily is one of the properties that are scored, right?
Yes, I'm not sure if it's all multifamily properties, but they did add that a couple of years ago. That's my
Right.
understanding.
And one of the ways that will help the village to better serve the commercial building community is that there are a fair number of incentives out there from the federal and the state and also the utilities. And so if you find that there's a certain system that's underperforming in a building, you'll be in a better position to apply for those financial incentives.
Could you talk a little, you talked about disclosure. Could you talk a little bit more about how that looks? You know, is it customers or prospective tenants going to the Energy Star portal, or is it, you know, a plaque on the wall in the lobby of the building? I mean, how you see kind of, you know, the disclosure piece working?
Well, actually, I'd love to get people's feedback on that. The way that Evanston does it is they publish on their website, on their benchmarking page, a spreadsheet that people can go and look up specific addresses. In Oak Park, there's about 250 buildings that fall into this category. But Chicago and New York, they have certificates that, you know, owners can choose to display, you know, to tout their very efficient building. But I'd love to hear from you all. What would you like to see from the disclosure aspect of the program? Would you like a certificate? Would you prefer there to just be a spreadsheet? What would folks like?
Could there be a registry on the village page that informs people and residents of buildings that are complying with energy efficiency standards?
Yes, we could definitely do that.
I mean, I guess my take on it is if the purpose of the benchmarking, right, is to give kind of the village an opportunity to kind of see where their metrics are, right, then it's probably less important to be, you know, that visible at the individual property level, right? Alternatively, if you're a project where you've got a higher score, you know, I think, you know, someone hit on it earlier, right, where it's probably something you want to market and make a splash with, right? And it's a differentiator as you go to recruit tenants and clients, I would propose. But my general take would be, you know, less visible as a mandate, with the thought that some may choose, you know, to be more visible.
Thank you. Have folks been familiar with benchmarking before today? Do you do it for properties in other locations?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just speak for us. I know we do as well. I think the challenge is always, you know, where does it go from here, right? And would love to hear the thoughts, right? It starts as a benchmark and then, you know, it stays there until, you know, it's, you know, want more, right? And better and improvement. And so I think someone hit on it earlier where it's just, you know, the resources, right? And I think it's important to tie the available resources to any sort of incremental improvement mandate, right? And it might have been Bill who mentioned just, you know, have made significant investment previously. So any sort of requirement down the road, understanding that today, and it sounds like probably not in 2024, but, you know, don't know what the plan is for beyond that. I don't know if anyone does. But just recognizing that, you know, there's costs associated with that are borne by the owners, and tying some sort of resources and financial incentives, which in general is you guys know, don't cover dollar for dollar typically, right? So I think that's I mean, for me, that's probably the bigger concern, not just here, but in other markets we operate in.
Thanks, Mike.
Is there a game plan for incorporating at some point more reporting on single family homes, 2 flats and 3 flats?
That's not in the ordinance. We currently don't have any policy direction from the board to do that, but if that's something that folks would find valuable or definitely don't want, feel free to let us know. You can either tell us now or via the comment form or, at the board meeting that's coming up. David, would you like there to be, or are you ready to speak on whether you would like there to be reporting for 1 to 3 unit buildings?
Yeah, I mean, I think the public disclosure element of it may be something that might be a bit of a challenge, but the practical reality is that the energy utilization on a per unit basis for households is a lot lower in multi-unit buildings than it is in single family buildings. And so I want to make sure that we don't somehow suggest that people who are living in multi-units are worthy of our focus, whereas people who are living in single family homes aren't.
Understood.
I think if you wanted to do something with electrical usage for households, ComEd has an incredibly good, robust way of benchmarking you with every neighbor within 100 yards of your house, how much they're using, how many square feet their house is. And then they send you an email grading you every week to see if you've gone up or down. So it's a pretty powerful tool that they already have. So maybe promote that as opposed to creating another program.
That's a great point, Phil. If you do you recall the name of the program, or do you have a link for it?
Yeah, I don't do very well on the ranking, but I'll send you an email.
Thank you. I want to make sure we have a chance to hear from folks who have been a little quieter. Andrew, Edward, Barb, Derek, Chris, Victor, Mariah, thoughts?
Hi, I guess one question. Is there a potential deadline that's already in mind on when the benchmarking data would be required? I know the city of Chicago typically does a June 1st deadline. So it would be somewhat easy if it lined up with that, but also since this is a new mandate, I don't know if it would be that soon in the year already.
That's really great feedback. We can definitely, the ordinance will have an annual deadline. And if June 1st is easiest for landlords who have properties across, different cities to do that, we can definitely coordinate. In terms of the legislative process in Oak Park, this ordinance, if the village board decides to give direction to proceed with it, we have to go through 2 public readings. So we have the study session on Monday, and the board will give input to the village staff about this concept in general. Then the next step would be for the village's staff to draft up the ordinance and put it on on an agenda for an upcoming board meeting. It would have its first public reading, and then the board would give any comment, and there would be an opportunity, of course, for community public comment. And then it would go to a second reading as well, with any adjustments, made from the first reading. And then there would be a board vote. So this isn't going to happen tomorrow or even in the next month. It's going to be a few months down the line. So I don't think that we'll be aiming for June 1st for this year, given that, but we can certainly spend, unless the board directs us to go for that timeline. But we can certainly spend a lot of time this year making sure that folks are set up and, maybe not waiting until the very end of the deadline to get folks into the program.
A suggestion on timing that I understand the Chicago June 1st timeline, but historically the benchmarking work that's been done through the Community Foundation has targeted calendar year cycles. And so if we wanted to sort of bring it in line with like the the Planet Green report cards that have come out, it might be helpful to actually have that on an annual cycle and have it just be an end of year response. And by doing that, it also then would allow some of us to be able to align that then with our end of year financials, and we would, be reconciling that information naturally anyway. And so it might actually come more into line with some of the work that a lot of us already are doing.
Thanks, David. Also a really good point. Let's take a quick poll. If you're not an employee of MIA or the village, if you go to your reactions, how many folks would appreciate June 1st as the deadline? If you go to reactions and there's a little green check mark, you can do that. Okay, so June 1st, we got 1 vote, 2 votes, 1 no. Okay, how many people would 2 no's, 2 to 2. How many people would prefer end of year, so a calendar year cycle? Okay, so I think that's 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 7, 8. 6. Okay, great. Thank you. That's super helpful. If you feel strongly about it, please do also put it in the comment survey on that website that I linked to as well.
Do you see any requirements for certified professionals, or will you allow property managers or owners to input the information?
Yeah, I think we want it to be as accessible as possible. So Allison, I don't believe that the model ordinances typically have certification requirements, right?
Well, so property owners or managers can enter in the information. Anyone can do that. One thing that is a best practice is to have a data verification happen every 3 years by a certified professional. And so that currently has been floated around as part of the draft ordinance. Both Evanston and Chicago do require that. And basically what that does is it just makes sure that the data that is entered has been entered correctly, because the last thing that you want is for there to be some kind of anomaly that happens, and then for it to skew your Energy Star score, or even, just the data that's being collected. And so that's the rationale for that. I will say that the U.S. Green Building Council and other entities, including MIA, train people to be those certified professionals, and there's access to that. So if that is a concern for people, I do think that the village probably wants to hear about it, but that is considered a best practice in these ordinances, just so that the data is accurate.
We have thoughts about data verification and certified professionals. Andrew? Andrew, there's some background noise. Yeah, there you go.
I'm so sorry. People are working on their bathrooms right now. Is there, I feel like water usage is already controlled by the city. So what benefit is that to have building people report it?
I didn't quite catch that. Could you say that again? Or put it into chat?
Sure.
Well, Andrew's doing that. I just wanted to answer Barb's question in chat. Yes, we will supply the PowerPoint to the registered attendees. We'll also put it up on the engagement website. So yes, you'll get those as well as the links that are been placed into chat.
So the question, Marcella, was why would we want the water usage reported, since the village is already handling the water usage for, like, we control water? And I think the answer to the question is that everybody controls how much water they use. Yes, we control what water you use because through the meter, but we want you to think about how you're using water in your building.
It can also, one of the really useful things about benchmarking is it can catch leaks. So if you are if you notice a spike in your data, it means there's probably something going on within your building. So it can catch water damage much earlier than, you know, watching your ceiling bubble, for example. So that's a really huge benefit for building owners, but it's also an awareness issue similar to energy. You know, water is a resource, and making water actually uses energy. So it is related. And it's also just a way to be cognizant of of water use and try to get to a stronger water conservation basis for your building. And then Andrew, you asked about natural gas. There is gas usage benchmarking. So that data would come from your gas supplier, which is probably, you know, might be Nicor. And Nicor doesn't have quite an easy of a way to get the data automatically imported into Portfolio Manager, although I have been talking to the state about nudging them closer to that to make it easier for you all. But one thing that's important to note is that you only need to do it once a year and for the whole building. So it doesn't have to be a very frequent thing, and it doesn't have to be unit by unit. So you just basically would contact your gas supplier, ask them to give you that one number for the whole year, put it into the program, and then you're done. I see Andrew and Bill have their hands raised. So Bill and then Andrew.
In River Forest, they have in their water billing system, if they know, somehow they get alerts and they actually call us if the building is over an amount that, so they must get an email alert from their system and they call us and they tell us. And in the bill, they actually also explain to you that your overall usage is greater than what it had been. So they do a leak detection program for us. That would be hugely helpful in Oak Park, because sometimes you don't get the bill for 30 days after, or 20 days, or whatever. So you could be 60 days behind chasing the leak. And I think that would be a really helpful tool for me as a property manager if you guys got that in your billing system.
So we are working towards that. I think, you know, we can talk to the Director of Public Works and he can give us a little write-up about it, and Marcella can probably send it out to everybody.
Yeah, but thank you for that feedback, Bill. Definitely we'll talk to the pump station and Rossville about that. I think some of the hands went down, so did anybody else have a comment or question? Okay. Well, thank you for coming today and for being such an engaged participants. I see a comment from Andrew. Benchmarking for these utilities, from what I know about the industry, should be a multiple year data collection. Yes, it's an ongoing program. So we would initiate it 1 year and then it would be continuous from there on out. And the idea is that as more data is collected, the building owners have more information, they make more improvements, and then the scores should improve over time. And, you know, you could be recognized for that substantial improvement. Actually, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager program has a way of calculating the score that shows that if you make significant improvements in 1 year, you do jump a level. So even like most improved is also rewarded, not just the bottom line. So those incremental improvements are definitely appreciated and recognized. Okay, folks, so if you have other feedback you would like to give, I do encourage you to go to that engagement website, and I'm on the other line of that website. So, you know, you're welcome to reach out to me through that or through my email, which is sustainability@oak-park.us. I'd really appreciate you coming today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Marcella.
Thanks very much.